Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. So we're going to be playing some more Branded Despia today. I was actually playing a little bit on ladder because I was trying to get games for another deck I want to feature on the channel and kind of tanked my ranking a little bit in doing so, and didn't really get any good games in the process, but I still might try to feature that deck. We'll see. In any case, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm not like super concerned about my ranking nowadays, but I do want to get it up at least a little bit, right? So I was like, let's just, or I guess I just didn't want to drop all the way back down to Diamond 5. So I was like, let's just play a little Branded Despia, and I actually ended up having some really good games. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I had some games where I was able to make some pretty, not like too complex, but kind of out there plays, just based on information my opponent was giving me, that I wanted to share with you all. So we're still using the Frightfur, sorry, I bumped the mic cord there. We're still using the branded, this is the brand, of course, the Frightfur engine in particular. I'm still liking this build in particular. Oh, I did add Nibiru as well, because as a lot of people pointed out, and rightfully so, because I've always said this, like, if you're going to play 3 Maxx, you need to play Nibiru so that you have a threat to draw into, and without Nibiru, the Maxxs were kind of pointless. The other option was to cut down or even drop Maxxs altogether, which would have definitely not been like an awful option. I just, like, I don't know, in ranked ladder and best of 1 format, like, I really feel like you need like the Master Duel attacks, which is the 3 Cs, the Ash, the Nibiru at the very least, but also I like to include the Call By and the Crossout. I mean, yeah, that's like, you know, literally a fourth of your deck. That's 10 cards right there, but like, really, these 10 cards are so important to be main decking, I think, in if you're going to be, like, you know, trying to get up to Diamond 1 or like high, you know, higher ranked ladder here on Master Duel. It's definitely important to have these 10 cards in your deck, I think, but that said, they're not necessary. Like, I could have easily cut the Maxxs as well as the Nibiru. It would have allowed room for more like tech and stuff, but I don't know that there's necessarily a whole lot more tech I feel the need to play at the moment. There is Branded Lost is still not currently being featured in this build, and I wouldn't mind, you know, playing it again, but I think I'd be more apt to cut Allures. I talked about this a little bit in our metagame analysis. I think I'd be more apt to cut Allures for that before I would cut down on like Maxxs and Nibiru unnecessarily. Because Allure is, I think, definitely much less necessary, but still very good. Allure is very, very good, not just for like drawing you more gas, but I also really like using it to check for Ash Blossom. If you activate an Allure and you know, that's the first thing you've played on turn 1, and your opponent gets a prompt to respond, it pretty much means they have Maxx, Dimension Shifter, or Ash Blossom. It's one of those 3. Obviously, Dimension Shifter is the much least likely of those. But yeah, it's a good way to check for, like, I guess anything can check for C, because anything will prompt a response for C, but if you play an Allure and you get a response for an Ash, like, or you get a response, your opponent gets a prompt to respond, you can just keep in mind that there's a decent chance it might be an Ash Blossom, and then you can just play moving forward with that. Same with the Frightfur Patchwork. And I've noticed, like, you know, people will Ash Allures in Frightfur Patchwork. I'm going to throw this out there as a tip for people playing against this deck. Don't do that. Don't Ash the Allure, the Patchwork. Don't even Ash the Aluber, honestly. Ash the Branded Fusion. This is absolutely the thing you want to hit if you're playing against this deck with Ash Blossom, because Branded Lost will not protect from it. Kind of one of the reasons I don't like Branded Lost. Again, I talked about this in the metagame analysis already, but again, not opposed to playing Branded Lost, but just currently trying to keep the build down to 40 cards and don't feel like I have room for it if I still want to also be playing 3 Allures. But the Branded Fusion, yeah, that's what you want to be hitting with the Ash Blossom, because if this gets stopped, then we're just done for the turn. And ashing any of these is not guaranteed that you're going to stop the Branded Fusion, not even the Aluber. I mean, there's plenty of times they'll open Aluber, not even plenty of times, just as a default, like, and I think everyone does this who plays this deck. If you open Aluber plus Branded Fusion, you're still going to normal summon the Aluber first to check for / bait the Ash, and then even if you don't, then you just get to add Branded in red, which actually, adding this will even allow you to make some additional plays and play around some cards. I think, if I recall correctly, I have a replay where we do this, but in any case, let's go ahead and break down this list card by card, as we always do, before we get into those replays there. So, we are playing 2 Despain Tragedy, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Edge Imp Chain, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Fallen of Albaz, 3 Aluber the Jester of Despia, 1 Tri-Brigade Mercourier, 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 Polymerization, 3 Allure of Darkness, 2 Frightfur Patchwork, 3 Branded Fusion, 2 Super Polymerization, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Desginator, 3 Branded Opening, 2 Branded in Red, and 1 Infinite Impermanence. Extra deck is going to contain 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 1 Predaplant Dragostepelia, 1 Titanklad the Ash Dragon, 2 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Despian Quaretits, 2 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon, 2 Lubellion the Searing Dragon, and then finally 2 Guardian Chimera. Also, for those wondering what I took out for the Nibiru, I did drop the Spriggan's kit, the one of that we were playing there. Honestly, I didn't feel she was particularly necessary. It was pretty rare that I summoned her. She's really just another option to search for Branded Fusion, but she's kind of a worse option because you have to put another card back as well, so it's kind of like an extra -1 to get your play going, which I mean is the case with like Branded Opening as well, but still, the kit was ultimately, I felt, the least necessary card to the build, so that is what I ended up cutting for Nibiru to keep us at 40 cards there. Plus, it didn't seem to make sense to go to 41 to keep a card that is trying to search a card we're trying to draw anyway, so just for consistency's sake, I just want to keep it at 40, but yeah, so that is the build there. Now let's go and take a look at some gameplay. Okay, so I wanted to start with this game. This was, I think, this was the last game that I played here, or one of the last games that I played, actually just like not even 30 minutes ago. This was going to be a shorter replay, but I wanted to demonstrate how like you can use certain information to figure out like how to make plays that might not seem obvious. And this is also why I have often advocated for like really studying and understanding all of the decks in a meta, even if you aren't playing that deck, even if you're not interested in playing a meta deck. If you want to play a rogue deck, it's still important to know what meta decks are playing to play optimally. And I feel like this game we get a pretty decent example of that, right? So I ended up taking the first turn here. I did win the coin flip. That's actually going to be relevant because sometimes, you know, you lose the coin flip, but you still go first. It's a pretty easy tell that you're playing against usually Numeron. We are actually playing against Numeron here, but again, I won the coin flip going first, so I don't know that just yet. So looking at my hand here, this hand is incredible, by the way. It's almost a little too good because we're going to have to end up throwing out one of these cards in order to make plays later. And I really want to keep all 3 of these, but just, you know, obviously cannot complain about an opening hand like this. So we're going to lead with the Branded Fusion as opposed to the Branded Opening, just so we don't have to discard too many cards here. Of course, fusing the Fallen of Albaz and the Despain Tragedy, as always there. Going to use the Lubellion, sending the Branded Opening in order to fusion summon, and then I'll use the Tragedy to add Aluber here. The thing is, though, I am still going to have to discard an extra card if I want the Ad Libitum of Despia, which I do want in order to make sure that I can recycle my Mirrorjade next turn. So I will end up discarding one of these cards I really want to keep. It's going to end up being the Mercourier, because I think the Maxx and the Ash Blossom are just more like flexible in their use than the Mercourier is. Like, yeah, the Mercourier can negate like any monster effect, but Ash Blossom tends to negate most relevant monster effects as far as like comboing goes, and on top of that can negate like spells and traps that can potentially tutor stuff as well. And then of course the Maxx is just like, you know Maxx, you got to keep this one. So I did misclick here, by the way. This Ad Libitum should definitely be in my hand and not face up on the field. That was definitely a misclick on my part, by the way. But I figured as long as it was on the field, I might as well give my monsters some more attack points. There didn't seem to be a reason not to. So, and then of course setting the brands in red. Now here my opponent is playing a Twin Twisters, and they discard a Puri-Rees map. Now, the fact that they've made these 2 specific plays is how I know immediately I'm playing against Numeron, because these are 2 cards that, like, more so the Puri-Rees map, obviously, than the Twin Twisters, right? The Puri-Rees map there are a few other decks that it does see play in, like very niche decks, so it in and of itself is not a telltale that it is a Numeron, although it is a very strong indicator that it's Numeron, although not every Numeron deck plays Puri-Rees map, but it's really this in conjunction with the Twin Twisters that it to me is a dead giveaway that I'm playing against Numeron, right? Because I can't think of many other decks that would run specifically those 2 cards. Obviously the Twin Twister is good for clearing back rows, so that way they can do their OTK, and then the Puri-Rees map can search the Numeron wall, which can then search the Numeron network. So with this information, we're going to play differently moving forward, because normally in this situation, if I was just playing blind, like let's say my opponent played Twin Twister and discarded something really generic, like in a, I don't know, like an Effect Veiler or something, right? That actually still probably would have been an indicator that I was playing against Numeron, because still Valor plus Twin Twister is a pretty weird combination for a deck other than Numeron to use, but they're still fairly generic cards. My point is, if my opponent had used generic cards and I was still blind playing here, I would still chain like the branded in red. Like, okay, let's say instead of a Twin Twister, this was a hard base Feather Duster, right? And that's all the information I had, is that my opponent was Feather Dustering my one back row. I would definitely still chain branded in red here, fusing these two, but in a blind scenario, I'd probably just fuse for the Masquerade, right? Or maybe like the Dragostepelia, but usually blind, I like to go for the Masquerade more to, you know, kind of punish more longer combo plays. And then that way, of course, I'd have also used my branded red before I got destroyed to recycle my Mirrorjade. However, knowing that I'm playing against Numeron, I'm thinking to myself, okay, why don't I instead just fuse for, oh, and then of course I'm going to Ash the Maxx here as well. Because I don't want my opponent to get more draws, just in case they don't have the Numeron network right now. I could wait and save the Ash for something like a Planet Pathfinder, but that's a pretty niche thing. I just want to get the Maxx now. So yeah, I want to use branded red not for the Masquerade like I would do in a blind scenario here, but actually for Despian Quaretits, because even though it's a relatively niche effect, it's actually going to be super duper relevant here. And then of course that's also going to end up recycling the Mirrorjade as well by summoning it back with the Ad Libitum. But yeah, the Despian Quaretits here, oops, that actually kind of startled me a little bit because I had paused. I didn't realize the animation was still going to play. But yeah, the Quaretits here has an effect that, you know, during the main phase, I can change all of my opponent's monsters, or all non, you know, fusion monsters, level 8 or higher fusion monsters on the field, can set their attack points to 0, which completely devastates any kind of play that Numeron could even try to make, right? Because the Numerons don't increase by a static amount, they double. And obviously 0 times 0 is still 0. So by using this on my opponent's Numeron monsters, they're not going to be able to do anything at all. They're not going to be able to OTK whatsoever. And then of course the Mirrorjade removal is still around for, I mean, to be fair, most monsters my opponent would link into would probably be like Appaloosa or the Infinite Track, which would either be able to negate or be unaffected by Mirrorjade's effect. I would still normally have to contend with that, which is why I'm actually a little surprised my opponent ends up just conceding in response here. Like, yeah, of course they're not able to do their Numeron OTK, but I would think they would still have like a link play to fall back on here. But especially if it was the Infinite Track, the 4000 attack link monster, this deck actually would have I don't know actually how I would get over that with this deck, to be totally honest, now that I think about it. Like, I'm not playing Droplet to have its attack. I'm not playing Lightning Storm to blow it up. So maybe my opponent even conceded a little bit early there. But in any case, just wanted to show that game as an example of how you can read seemingly minor information to make more informed plays that can then get you like a free win like this. It's why knowing your opponent's deck is so important. It's so easy to overlook that, like, oh, my opponent threw out a random card for that Twin Twister, well, whatever. Like, no, it's like, you know, you gotta pay attention to that and definitely compare against, not even just your own knowledge. You could even, like, have Master Duel. I've done this sometimes, just have MasterDuelMeta.com up on the side, and then, you know, I see a card like Pure Reason Map, that's kind of weird. I'll type in, like, okay, Pure Reason Map, like, what decks play that card? And it's like, oh, okay, so it's likely one of these decks, so. Yeah, okay, let's go and take a look at some more games. Alright, so this deck is going to be, that we're playing against, rather, is going to be Adventure Tenyi. Probably going to be one of the last, if not the last time this deck is going to get featured on this channel, Adventure Tenyi, which I liked playing with Adventure Tenyi, I'm not going to lie. I'm not particularly sad to see how it could go, because it did need to go, but I'm going to miss playing Adventure Tenyi, I won't lie. So, okay, I talked about this a little bit in the deck profile. I'm going to lead with Allure here just to check for Ash and see if my opponent has a prompt to respond. And they actually end up ashing the Allure. Again, I will say, you should not ash the Allure. The card you should be ash blossoming is the Branded Fusion, because all roads are gonna end up leading to Branded Fusion anyway. Now that my opponent's played this Ash Blossom, I know I can, you know, do all the rest of this stuff without fear of getting stopped by it. And also, you know, when your opponent throws out a hand trap and they've only got 4 cards left in hand, it becomes statistically, like, not so much, but like enough less likely that they have another kind of response. It's not impossible, mind you. You should still be playing with those kind of responses in mind you, but it becomes less likely that your opponent's going to have another response, which is a little bit of a relief, I find anyway. Once we play a little bit more confidently going into the rest of the turn there. So, yeah, we're going to do just fairly standard opening stuff at this point. You know, we did have to throw out a couple of cards from our hand because we used branded opening as opposed to just opening with like an Aluber, but we still get to end with the Guardian Chimera setup as well as the Maxx in our hand as well. So I feel that obviously in combination with the Mirrorjade that we're going to recycle is more than enough to stop our opponent here. And sure enough, you know, as soon as our opponent reveals Vishuda, definitely going to throw down the Maxx here, so that way we can not have to deal with that. So we end up drawing, of course, off the Maxx Polymerization. Then opponent's going to link into Monk of the Tenyi. Now at this point, I don't know that they're Adventure Tenyi specifically, because both Adventure Tenyi and Sword Soul Tenyi both use the Monk. Although I know not every Adventure Tenyi uses the Monk, most do, but not every does. But every Sword Soul does use at least one, at least two, honestly, Monk of the Tenyi. So I'm thinking maybe it's a slightly more likely I'm playing against Sword Soul at this point, but obviously just still keeping an open mind. Either way, we definitely need to chain the Branded in red here against the Monk of the Tenyi, because our opponent's got a Vishuda in the graveyard. So if we don't use the Branded in red to fuse away the Mirrorjade now, then our opponent's just going to banish the Vishuda and bounce our Mirrorjade back. And that's definitely the last thing we want happening. So we're definitely going to need to Guardian Chimera away this Monk of the Tenyi here. Of course, and then the Ad Libitum is going to allow us to recycle the Mirrorjade, like I mentioned as well. And then we also additionally get a couple of draws on top of the Surge, on top of all the other draws we're getting with Maxx. This deck just gains so much advantage, it's unreal. It's honestly how this deck makes up for having no like negates or floodgates, like only disruption, is just like the sheer amount of advantage you can get. So here my opponent's going to special summon Ashen, and as you can see I'm going to activate Mirrorjade in response. The reason I did this was kind of twofold, right? I figured, you know, I wanted to hedge in case I was playing against Sword Soul Tenyi and not give my opponent to set up another Monk of the Tenyi on board, but also more importantly not give them a chance to set up the Ashina in the graveyard. In addition to that, I figured if my opponent is playing Adventure Tenyi, then it's a little bit less likely that with 3 cards remaining in their hand, they're going to be able to normal summon and then still special summon another, like a tuner and another monster, you know? So I figure I'm going to hedge a little bit here and use the Mirrorjade to just banish this Ashina. That way it doesn't end up in the graveyard. I don't have to worry about it later. Now, of course, my opponent actually still has both Chiwen and exactly Basil Rose Shoot for Red Rose, so they are actually still able to get their setup here for the Hulk, but we also have Nibiru in hand, so I'm not really worried about it at all. Plus, we've gotten so many we have enough, you know, with what's in our hand at this point, we have more than enough material to get over the token, however big it ends up being. So at this point, I'm just going to wait for my opponent to throw out the Auroradon here for a couple of extra draws, and also to make sure that we hit the Auroradon with the Nibiru, because most people are still playing one Auroradon. Actually, I think maybe most people are playing 2 now from the last time I looked at the statistics. Either way, it's not uncommon for people to only be playing one Auroradon. And if you Nibiru and hit after the Hulk and Auroradon are gone, rather, if you Nibiru after only the Hulk is gone, your opponent still has the potential to make Auroradon later with 2 level 7s into Galaxy Tomahawk into Auroradon. But if you use the Nibiru to hit the Auroradon and the tokens, then you just make it that much harder for your opponent to have future plays. Not that they're gonna have future plays. My opponent at this point, right, they have nothing left after this, and I have like what is this, 5-10 cards in hand? Yeah, no, there's no way they're gonna be able to come back here. You know, even if I didn't play around the Auroradon that way, but I still figured, you know, it was a good example to show that for. Especially by the time this video goes up, I guess it'll be like mere days left that Adventure Tenyi is relevant. It probably won't be seeing it much play on the ladder at that point. But yeah, we went ahead and got the win there. Let's go and go to the next game. All right, this game is going to be against Tri-Brigade Mercourier, which I have not played with or against in quite a while. It's actually not a terrible deck right now. It's one of many tier 3 decks at the moment, as we saw in the, well, you know, according to Master Duel Meta's tier list, but that tier list, as always as ever, is not necessarily representative of what's on ladder. But of course, that doesn't mean, you know, I still think even if it's not tier 3, it's still a solid rogue deck, which of course, yeah, is more than capable of doing well in the meta there. So we open with a pretty standard setup here, right? We have the Aluber and the Lubellion. It's all uninterrupted at this point, so that's definitely nice. We even have the Edge Imp Chain stuff, and we even already have the Mercourier in hand. Definitely looking at a very nice hand here. So we were able to add the branded red. Okay, this was the game I was talking about in the profile. Yeah. I'm really glad I got to show you guys this game, because this is another game where we're able to make some kind of sweet plays around our opponent's disruption here, right? So because we had the branded fusion in hand already when we summoned the Aluber, I went ahead and added the branded in red. And when my opponent played the Infinite Impermanence here, I realized, oh wait, I can use branded in red and fuse away my Lubellion, get an extra monster, and then still resolve the Lubellion effect. So So that's actually exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to target the Despain Tragedy that I just sent, and then return that with the Branded Red. Now I can fuse that Tragedy and the Lubellion, which are already on the chain link, for an extra Masquerade. This will not only be, an extra Masquerade, but will then dodge the Imperm, and the Lubellion's going to resolve anyway. Which is nice because, the Mercourier can only negate monster effects, so if it was a Veiler, we could have just discarded the Mercourier, but because it was Imperm, we had to improvise. This play would have been better anyway, because, it's, like I said, it's going to end up with an extra Masquerade on the board, which is in and of itself, like, just incredible. And then, of course, we get even more advantage off the Frightfur Patchwork, off the Edge Imp Chain there, so... just, again, like I said, this deck is just so powerful, and just the fact that it can... even though it doesn't put out negates or floodgates, just the advantage plus disruption is so strong. Plus, again, we have 2 Masquerades here. It's so nice to have 2 Masquerades going into the opponent's first turn, because, like, just 1,200 life points to be able to do anything is a lot. That's a lot. Plus, we still have the Mirrorjade, the extra Mirrorjade banish. Plus, we still have the Branded Red for the Guardian Chimera setup as well. So yeah, opponent's going to lead with a Tenki. That's going to cost them 1,200 right there. They are actually going to end up having a Forbidden Droplet here. So they're not going to end up paying too much of a tax here. They're actually going to hit all 3 of our monsters, sending Kit, Fractal, and the Tenki they just activated. So good play on the opponent's part, definitely. I'll use the Mercourier in response to the Kit here to try to stop them from being able to do, well, much of anything, but they actually have the Call By as one of their last 2 cards, so a little bit unlucky on my part, but still not the end of the world by any means. As soon as they summon a Tri-Brigade monster, I'm just going to flip up Branded Red so I can Guardian Chimera it away, and then it'll just be, the game will be over at that point, so... yeah, I thought it was weird here, too, that they sent a Tri-Brigade Rendezvous. Although it makes sense because I know their last card in hand. Well, I guess I don't know. But their last card in hand is actually the other Fractal. I thought that they had just discarded the Fractal I searched off Tenki. But makes sense why they would send the Tri-Brigade Rendezvous. Also kind of makes sense why this card is being played. I feel like you see this a little bit more in the Leerlusk variant than, like, any other Tri-Brigade variant. But yeah, like I said, the opponent's going to play their second Fractal as the last card, sending the Nerval. Nerval effect is going to add a Keros. But then as soon as the opponent plays the Keros here, like I said, I'm just going to flip Branded Red, fusing the Mirrorjade, the Ad Libitum, and then the Edge Imp Chain in hand just to cycle it out for an extra draw in order to make Guardian Chimera. Not that I need extra draws for anything. I already have lethal on board because my opponent doesn't have anything else on field or in hand to, like, come back with at all here. So, and then, of course, even on top of that, the Ad Libitum bringing back the Mirrorjade. Like, we have extra lethal on board right now. Like, I think we have, like, what is it, 11,300 damage on board at this point. Like, yeah, it's just, it's over. It's so over. And the opponent just concedes in response. So, yeah, that's an example of how you can use an extra search. Like, again, since I already had the Branded Fusion, I was able to search the Branded Red. And then that, in turn, was able to allow me to not only dodge the Imperm, but then put out a second Masquerade. Very, very nice play that I had there that I wanted to show off there. So, all right, let's go and take a look at the next game. Alrighty, this game is going to be against Heroes, which is, I'm always a little bit sad, I'm not going to lie, a little bit sad when I have to play against Heroes, because I don't, it's the one deck I feel like sympathy for, I guess, just like in that, but not so much. I'm just going to concede to my opponent. In any case here, I'm going to lead with the Aluber for the Branded Fusion. Going to be a fairly standard, just Aluber setup here. For those of you who are wondering, like, what I mean when I just say, oh, just a standard Aluber setup, or oh, a standard, like, Aluber plus this setup, or whatever, definitely check out the combo guide that should be linked in the description below. It's going to cover all the basic combos of this deck. And it's fairly easy deck to pick up as well. Not as far as, like, crafting materials, mind you, but because there are a lot of ultra rares in this deck. But in terms of just, like, learning the plays, like, oh yeah, this deck is definitely not bad at all, in my opinion. So yeah, again, just setting up our standard play of having the Mirrorjade plus the Branded Red to make the Guardian Chimera on the opponent's turn. We also get to throw down a Super Poly. I love being able to open and set the Super Poly. Sometimes you open Super Poly and you do have to discard it with either Lubellion and or Branded Opening, just because you won't have enough cards, you need the other cards in your hand, or they're like a better card to have, like a Maxx or an Ash or something. But don't get me wrong, Super Poly is a very, very good card to have going into the opponent's turn. Now, the opponent's playing Heroes, which makes it a little bit awkward with Mudragon the Swamp, because Mudragon the Swamp wants different types among the same attribute, but Heroes are all warriors among different attributes. But It's still not uncommon for them to have like 2 dark monsters for the Starving Venom, or I could wait for them to do a fusion and a non-fusion for the Dragostepelia. And as I go into their Sunrise here, that's actually exactly what I'm going to do. But I want to wait for them to put out a different hero, because the Stratos and the Vion I know aren't particularly important to their strategy, but I know Malicious is actually a little bit more important, because it can be used to make stuff like the Cross hero, or the extra hero, the Cross thing, the Link monster, or like a DPE or something. So when they play Malicious in particular, I'm going to flip up Super Poly, discard my regular Poly, fusing their Sunrise and Malicious to summon a Dragostepelia to my board, which is a fusion monster and a dark monster. Yeah, if you're playing Super Poly, I think you should definitely have either Mudragon or Starving Venom in your extra deck. If you're gonna have one of the two, I would prefer, I think, the Starving Venom, just a little more powerful, and it's not too hard to have. For your opponent, you just really have to have one dark monster, because you're gonna have one dark monster most of the time anyway. So, yeah. In any case, I'm gonna Guardian Chimera here, but I'm not gonna destroy the Absolute Zero. Of course, I don't want to trigger the effect to destroy all of my monsters. What I'm actually doing here is I'm cycling out my Mudragon of the Swamp to try to get, or not my Mudragon of the Swamp, my my Mirrorjade, in order to be able to use its effect again, because I want to banish this Absolute Zero. I maybe should have done this a little bit sooner. I don't care about the Guardian Chimera getting negated. Like I said, the main thing I wanted was for the Mirrorjade to come down, but I maybe should have done this a little bit sooner, because now I'm in a bit of an awkward state where I can't use the Mirrorjade's effect freely here to banish the Absolute Zero, right? I have to wait for my opponent to do something, then I can chain with the Mirrorjade effect. So I'm wondering, maybe my opponent's going to hopefully play Maxx Change to try to use it on the Absolute Zero for Acid to blow up my back row as well. But they actually just ended up linking it away, which is what I was afraid of happening. Basically, then be able to use their next action to send Absolute Zero to the graveyard without being able to banish it first, because now all my monsters are going to get destroyed here. I chained the Dragostepelia, it's not going to really do anything, so there was no point in chaining that, but the Mirrorjade, I do want to banish the extra hero Cross Crusader here, just so that my opponent doesn't have any further link plays. And yeah, I am going to lose all my monsters here, but it's not the end of the world by any means. I still have a branded opening if I absolutely need to protect myself, and I actually forgot that I used up all my Alubers here. I thought I still had one in deck, which is why I went for the Despain Tragedy here. I definitely did not mean to summon that. If I had realized that I did not have an Aluber left in deck, I would not have activated it. It definitely goes to show, you know, you can't just activate a card because you're given a prompt to, right? You should definitely be mindful of what's left in your deck, or just, you know, be mindful of the card you're about to activate in any circumstance. You know, don't just blindly activate something. Alright, quite literally setting up the branded fusion here, but I actually top deck and I'm going to lead with this Aluber instead to get a Mirrorjade with the opponent's Dark Law, just to get it off the board. I've also got Super Poly as well that I could have used. I just have a bunch of options to steal my opponent's stuff, and sure enough, even the Albaz by itself, I think I said Aluber when I played that, but no, it was Albaz. Even that by itself was enough to get the opponent to concede here. So, yeah, alright, I think we have one more game to take a look at. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Alright, last duel of the video here is going to be one more against Numeron. Good old Numeron. It's funny how it's like, you know, sees so much play, but is still, just due to the nature of the deck, you know, just kind of always going to be that rogue outlier that you see on ladder sometimes. So this hand's pretty good here. We can definitely check for the Ash Plenty here with the Patchwork and Allure before the brand opening. Obviously, you want to use the Patchwork first, so that way we have something to banish with Allure there. Sending away the Edge Imp Chain. Now we can just use the branded opening. I will discard the Super Poly before the Allure here, because I just want to make sure that there's not a scenario where I want to like use the Allure a little bit later in the turn. Whereas, of course, the Super Poly I am not only planning on not using, but also just given the rest of what's in my hand here, I want to keep the Maxx and Nibiru, and I'm going to use the Polymerization, so I don't want to discard any of this stuff for Super Poly. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier when I talked about how, like, I will discard Super Polymerization pretty liberally if I open it, but that said, it's still really nice when you can actually manage to avoid doing that, so you can have the Super Poly going into your opponent's turn. And, you know, there's definitely an argument to say, like, oh, you should discard Nibiru instead of Super Poly because you don't want to Nibiru your own board away, but I just like the it feels like having just insurance, right? Just having board just like board control insurance, where like even if I completely lose control of the board to the state where I don't mind nuking some of my own stuff, I have the option to do that, right? So in any case here, we can get the setup with the Masquerade and the Mirrorjade, as well as the branded red for a Guardian Chimera during the opponent's turn, and then we also have the Maxx and Nibiru on standby as well. So yeah, opponent's got a Harpy's Feather Duster here, so I'll just go ahead and respond with the branded in red. Of course, I'm returning the Ad Libitum, and I'm going to fuse that with the Mirrorjade here. And I actually get to summon a second Masquerade. This is another game where we well, that last game we did actually open going into the opponent's first turn with 2 Masquerade. This one we kind of did it, just at the start of the opponent's turn, so it's kind of like we opened 2 Masquerade, but kind of didn't, you know what I mean. They do have a Kaiju for our Mirrorjade, which is definitely annoying here, as well as another Droplet. It's so frustrating. I so rarely get to pull off 2 Masquerade, and then, the couple of times it's happened, the opponent's got a Forbidden Droplet there. But, well, it's definitely not the end of the world or anything. Alright, I'll definitely Maxx in response to the Numeron gates coming down. Although I should have waited technically, but yeah, they were gonna activate it. You never don't here. So here, okay, this might look a little weird. You might be like, wait, didn't you want a Nibiru so you don't get OTK'd? But I actually stopped and thought about the math here, and I thought, okay, 1k, 2k, 4k, 8k, 8 minus 27, that'll leave me obviously with 2,700 life points. So I actually don't need to Nibiru here because I don't think I'm going to lose here. And sure enough, as they move into battle phase, it's confirmed that, they don't actually have the OTK here. I do want to wait just to make sure the token doesn't have too many stats, although this does come with an inherent risk of my opponent could link away into an Appaloosa, and if that's the case, I won't be able to Nibiru without it getting negated. So I don't think that's going to be the case though. So sure enough, my opponent decides to go into the number C1. I figured it was probably going to either be number C1 or the Infinite Track, one of the two, but yeah, definitely don't mind getting the Nibiru against especially the number C1, because that'll actually get rid of the token for us, and then we don't have to worry about that going forward into the opponent's turn. Which again is part of why I waited to Nibiru when I realized that the damage from my opponent's Numeron gates wouldn't be lethal. Yeah, and plus on top of that, now they're only left at 2,200 life points, and that's definitely what we like to see. Basically, a lot easier to win going forward, which we can do with this Branded Diffusion alone, and then the opponent just concedes in response anyway. So, yeah, that does it for games for this video. Let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright everybody, just want to thank you for watching all the way to the very end like this. That does mean a whole lot to me, not only personally, but also as a means of supporting the channel. Same with those of you who are commenting and subscribing. Again, means a lot to me, and both are great ways of supporting the channel. Comments, definitely let me know if you have any opinions about the build or gameplay. I'm always looking for feedback in that regard. It not only helps me grow as a duelist, but also all of us. I'm always all about that community-based learning, peers educating peers, something I believe very strongly in. So when you leave those comments with suggestions, you're not only helping me, but also everybody else as well. So we definitely love to see it. Yeah, subscribing, again, a great way of supporting the channel. Also is the best way to get notified of when my videos drop, which does happen every single day. So know that if you subscribe, you do get a daily Master Duel video out of me. But yeah, just thanks again for sticking around. I do love this Branded Despia deck. I do. I know it's like the tier 1 meta threat, but I honestly like playing decks like that. I won't lie. I'll just be completely unabashed. I do love those kind of decks. And two, among those kind of decks, I think this is one of the ones that I tend to have quite a bit of fun playing as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So without further ado, this is Texlex. I'm signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.